everyone, George here. Welcome back to another video. Someone suggested, I can't remember exactly who or which video, pretty sure it would have been a few months ago, showing if they asking me if I have a soap recipe for babies. So I have, as you've seen in a recent video, I created a new one for my friend's gender reveal party, and that is mainly olive oil, a little bit of castor, coconut and sunflowers. That's the first time I ever did that combination. But what I really make in my range is 90% olive oil, 5% coconut oil and 5% castor oil. And what I do with that is I heat infuse it with calendula and chamomile. So I thought I'll show, because that was a good idea of that viewer when they said, do you have a baby recipe or a baby friendly recipe? And I thought, okay, well, since I need to make just a few extra batches of this particular baby bars, I thought I'll just go ahead and film it. And just melting down everything slowly. So you don't want it too hot. So this is my hot plate that I use from Coma, and I don't know if you can see from there, but that's one. So I have about 3/4 of the way. So not all the way, because you want it to sit comfortably around 50 degrees Celsius for about 8 hours, between 6 and 8 hours. And you can judge by how strong you want it when you actually smell the oil. So I'm actually going to be putting in organic calendula petals and chamomile flowers. So this is really, really good for baby skin, really good for helping soothe and clean, like nappy rash areas and stuff. It's just overall really, really good for baby skin. Just beautiful, because as chamomile and calendula, they have really nice soothing effects on anyone's skin, let alone just baby skin. So it's actually good for anyone to use if they have irritated skin or a rash on their skin. And chamomile and calendula is known to be quite soothing, and it has a lot of properties in regards to helping alleviate skin rashes and itchiness, even really good for bug bites as well. You could even infuse this oil, like how I'm doing now, and then actually use it in body balms, and that'll be really great for on the spot, for insect bites or mosquito bites or any type of skin irritation. So I leave that with the lid on for about 8 hours, but before I put the lid on, just leave it. Every half an hour to an hour, I'll come and stir everything to make sure that getting all the herbs around, the botanicals around, and then when I'm finished, when it's done, I get a nut milk bag, as you've seen me use in previous videos, like when I'm making my oat milk or almond milk, and I just strain out the herbs from the oil as best as I can. And of course, I like to be safe, because this is a 2 kilo oil batch. I like to, as I'm straining it with the nut milk bag and getting as much of the oil out as possible, I like to put it on the scale, because I like to make sure that I'm getting 2 kilos worth of oil back into the pot. So, because you don't want to, you want it to be at a 5% super fat, and if you're losing oil, then obviously the super fat will lessen. So, and it might be just a little more on the drying side for baby skin, especially because their skin is really sensitive. So it's important to make sure that when you're straining out the oil, that you're getting the same amount back. If it's a few grams off, it's not a big deal, but if it's like 50 grams off, for example, then that's essentially a 2.5% super fat instead of a 5% super fat, because it's a double batch. So every kilo of oil, 1% super fat is 10 grams of oil, from my understanding. And when you talk about 5% super fat, for example, that's 50 grams in your total oil weight, that's not soap. So that's where the conditioning benefits come from. And if you go like say 10%, that's 100 grams of your 1 kilo oil, that's not soap. So because this is 2 batches, so 2 kilos, a 5% super fat is 100 gram free oils that will be left in the finished product. So if you were to lose, say, 50 grams, then that would be a 2.5% super fat. So it's good to be mindful about when you're straining out the oil, when you're separating the botanicals from the oil. So it's just good to know that you have to actually make sure that you're getting the same amount back. And that's the same for water as well. So if you're straining out, oat milk and stuff, you want to make sure that, especially if you're working with smaller batches, you want to make sure when you squeeze all the milk out, if let's say your recipe calls for 250 grams of distilled water or oat milk or almond milk, whatever you're doing, and then when you squeeze it all out, and you might only get 200 grams of your milk. So there's still a lot of moisture that stays behind. So it's not as bad with oil. You can get most of it out, especially because these are just botanicals. It's a lot easier to squeeze all the oil out, but with water, it's a different story. You can lose a lot of mass in volume when you're trying to squeeze it out. So that's just to keep in mind. So I'll show you when I have this on the scale ready to use the nut milk bag to filter out the botanicals. I will put it on a scale and I'll make sure that it's minimum 2 kilos that I get back, so I know that it's safe. Right, so you don't want to put too much botanicals in here because we are aiming it for baby skin. If it's for adult skin, by all means you can go as crazy as you like. But we have to take into consideration that this is baby skin, so what I like to do per kilo of oil, I like to do half a cup. So this is 1 cup, so this will be 1 cup of each, of both chamomile and calendula. So I'll just make that up. So it doesn't have to be exact, but just roughly. What you could do is you could even weigh out how much a cup is. So it's probably easier for next time. You could probably do that. I don't bother doing that. I just shove as much as I can in the cup. And then I'll put it in. I am making a little bit of a mess there, but that's not unusual for me. Oops. So if I push that down, that's about 3/4 of a cup. That's plenty. So it's just a little bit under a cup. I don't like to go too strong, but roughly around a cup. You can go a little bit above or a little bit under. I like to stick just a tiny bit under, because like I said, it is baby skin and you don't want to cause any irritation. So I find this ratio works really well. So, where is my little clippy thing? Seem to have lost it. I'll put it in the middle. Let's open the bag. Make sure it's sealed nice and tight. And whereas, as you've seen from my previous videos, when I do make a mess, I use my old soap cutter. just to scrape just to get most of botanicals off. There we go. Right, so that's done. And I have to always vacuum here daily because I make such a mess. Right, so you just make sure that it's all mixed as much as possible. Make sure that all the botanicals are as saturated as you can get it. So as you can see here, it is quite a lot in there, but that's totally fine. It's quite mild, especially because it is going to go through the saponification process. The smell still remains in the finished product after it's cured. It's mild, it's not overpowering or anything like that. So it's a nice, mild chamomile and calendula aroma. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave this here for about an hour, just let it warm up a bit. And I'll put the lid on. I rearranged my area again because I was running out of room. So as you can see, this is my new table. I bought it because I wanted to put on my old table that I was using before was actually uneven. I bought it like that, I don't know why. I got it on clearance, I think it was for like $90 or something from an online auction. And when I got it, it's great, but it just was slightly uneven. So I thought, okay, I'll use that old table you've seen in my previous videos, put it in the corner, put all my shelving on it and use it as storage, and I get myself another portable one, stainless steel. It's actually got wheels, which is great, so it's easy to move around if I have to shift around with it. And yeah, so I'm still kind of getting used to this new setup, so hopefully it's okay on the camera. I'm not quite sure how it's going to look. Right, so I'm just going to leave this for about an hour. I'll go off and do whatever I have to do, and then I'll come back. Right, so I'm back, and it's been about, I'd say 2 hours. I haven't checked on it, but now I have. So I thought I'll just quickly show the progress. And as you can see, I tested the temperature as well to around 64 degrees. So I like to keep between 50 and 60 generally, so I just put the heat down a little. But as you can see, the oil has gone really, really dark just from that 2 hours. So adding heat to it generally really does speed up the process. So I'm still going to keep it for another few hours on low. I turned it about halfway now, so instead of 3/4 of the way. So I'll cover it up and leave it for another maybe 4 hours, I guess. And then I'll come and check on it. I probably won't even make this today. What I'll do is, after a few hours, I'll turn that off completely and just let it sit here with the residual heat for the next 6 to 12 hours, because it's going to be late by the time this would be ready. So I don't want to soak that late. I'll probably be asleep. So I'll come back to it tomorrow morning or an afternoon, and I'll make soap with it. So see you guys there. when I strained all the herbs out, I was 90 grams short of oil. Right, so I will go into detail actually about adding the 90 grams loss in my recipe, for example, and how I work it out. And as you know, I'm using coconut and castor oil in this recipe, so it's not going to have the same sap values as olive oil. So I have to assume in the 90 grams that is missing in this recipe, that 5% of that 90 grams is going to be coconut oil and 5% is going to be castor oil. So what I'm going to do in here is add 4.5 grams coconut and castor. Which is not a whole lot, but still you don't want to mess up any sap values. And if you're working with a really large quantity, because I'm only doing a 2 kilo batch just for simplicity, but in reality I might do a 5 or 6 kilo batch, and it might seem like it's not a lot for this small batch, but when you're doing a large batch, it can really make a huge difference in your finished product. So I'm going to just tear this out and then do 4.5 grams, which is not much. So it's a little bit, just went to 5 grams, that's okay. A little bit over is not going to affect anything. So it's 4.5 of the castor. It's 4.5 of the coconuts, which is a really small amount, but that's how you calculate any errors and take care of it, and it will not affect the finished product whatsoever. I'll just dump that. So it's 5 grams again, a little bit over. It's not a big deal whatsoever. And then we do 81 grams of just olive oil. Which is not much again. Perfect, 82 grams, a little bit over, not a big deal. Just mix that in. So what we've done now is we added the 90 grams missing, and we have to assume 5% of coconut and castor missing. So that's 4.5 grams of castor oil, 4.5 grams of coconut oil, and then 81 grams of extra virgin olive oil. So it's really important to if you are doing this method, which is a method I do all the time, but it was just important to point out that if there is any oil missing when you strain the herbs out, and in this case there was 90 grams missing, so I thought I'd just point out how I kind of fix that issue. Some people just do like a really big batch of olive oil, and they might infuse it, or any carrier oil that you wish, and you might infuse it with any herb that you like, and then you store it in like a preserving jar like this, that's washing soda. And then you just kind of leave it aside and you weigh it out as required. But for me, for simplicity, I just add the herbs to the oil, I weigh everything out, and then I just work out the difference at the end, what's missing, and I just account for the missing carrier oils after I strain it. I just find it easier that way. Even when I'm working larger quantities, I just get my calculator out and go, okay, and I work everything out, and it's never let me down in the past. And that's how kind of I do it. And this is a 2 kilo oil batch now in here, even though there's a little bit of coconut oil chunks. They're very, very small. I don't bother melting that down. That's fine. That will disperse when I use the stick blender. And I'll show you now, actually, what I'll do now is I will get my stick blender. So the coconut oil is completely dispersed and broken up into really, really fine pieces, and it will just disperse into the other carrier oils that are in here. For something as little as a few grams, you don't really have to worry about melting it down because, as you've seen, it was just a really, really small amount. Obviously, if it's a larger amount, like 100 grams, then yes, I would recommend melting it down. But for this, as you kind of didn't see the coconut oil chunks anymore, well, there might be a couple really, really tiny dots, but honestly, it really does not make a difference. Once I add the lye water to it and it starts to heat up as you're mixing, it'll disperse. And as you know, coconut oil has a really low melt point, 26 degrees Celsius. And this is definitely going to get hotter than 26 degrees. So I would not worry whatsoever about doing it that way. So, yeah, so I guess that's how I kind of do my oil infusion for baby bars. I haven't really done any other oil infusions. It's the only one that I kind of lean towards because I really love the way it makes the skin feel. But yeah, so now that we've got everything mixed in here, I'm going to weigh out my vitamin E because I just had that after emulsion. And then we're going to pour off into silicone molds. For the baby bars, I still use these loaf molds. And by the way, I still use these for some recipes, even though I'm working with slabs now. So I still use these for baby bars and my chocolate bars that I frost. I still quite like the loaf molds for that. So I tend to still use those for that. And any products like any soaps I'll design in the future when I'm frosting, I quite like these loaf molds, their size and how they look in the finished product as well. But for everything else, I go slab route. I really like the slabs for other recipes that I have and I make for. Alright, so stay tuned and I'll put some gloves on and then we'll get right into it.